Welcome to EXO Fleet's Insights, where every mile counts. The podcast where fleet data turns into real-world decisions. Each episode, we unpack what's really happening across mixed fleets, fuels and sites, and how better insights leads to better performance, lower costs, and fewer surprises on the road. So let's get into it. Welcome to another ZeroMission Plugged In podcast, where we dive deep into the innovations and trends shaping our future in EV fleet transportation. I'm your host, Niamh Quinn, and today we're thrilled to have an insightful discussion about one of the most transformative developments in the logistics industry, the evolution of the e-truck market. In this episode, we're honoured to welcome Leah O'Dwyer, our CEO of ZeroMission. With her extensive experience and visionary leadership, Leah has been at the forefront of driving electric vehicle integration in freight and transportation. She's here to shed light on how the e-truck market is evolving, the challenges, opportunities that lie ahead, and what the future holds for sustainable logistics. Whether you're a fleet operator, an industry enthusiast, or just curious about the shift from diesel to electric, this conversation is packed with valuable insights you won't want to miss. So without further ado, let's jump in and learn from Leah about the exciting journey that is redefining the e-truck transportation landscape. Hi Leah, how is the e-truck market evolving at present?
So right now, the e-truck market is showing some very healthy and significant signs of growth and development in Europe. All of the major OEMs have currently got vehicles available in the market. So the showroom, as it's referred to in the industry, is reasonably full. And most of the manufacturers have vehicles that fit all of the applications operators would look to electrify in the near future. So that's really helping the transition. The other thing is the infrastructure is also improving dramatically, particularly with the first of the megawatt charging stations that are being built across Europe. And in all locations, there's a greater availability of public charging that's geared towards truck operators. And in many sectors today, we're already beginning to see diesel parity emerging with electric vehicles compared to diesel. Also, of course, there's still lots of grants and incentives in the market. So you have regulation on one hand driving, of course, but you also have grants and incentives that support that. So some very generous grants in certain markets. But of course, when you couple that with the parity of diesel that's emerging, then the economic case for e-trucks are becoming very promising and very strong, and actually earlier than most people anticipated.
Is diesel parity really achievable with electric trucks in the near term?
It is, yes. So as I mentioned, the incentives are still there. So while the market is incentivized at the moment, that's certainly an advantage. But incentivizations on its own won't actually drive diesel parity. Diesel parity is coming from a number of other things. So one, the performance of the vehicles in service. If the vehicles can be utilized to their fullest extent, which is where a company like ZeroMission comes in, then diesel parity plus the much lower cost of energy associated with electric vehicles is possible. And already in some sectors, we're starting to see that. So it is a reality. And by 2030, based on all of the information coming from the industry research side, transport research side in Europe, and coming from out of the OEMs themselves, is that for most sectors, even into long distance haulage, diesel parity will be possible. Of course, there's many things to do between now and then, but we're moving into that phase where diesel parity isn't so sort of many, many years away. It's actually very near term, and in some cases, it actually applies today.
And can you tell us which sectors are likely to move first?
So the sectors that we see moving first are the ones with return to base charging. So a little bit similar to bus operations, where we've seen those working very successfully now for more or less 10 years in both Europe and North America. And we see vehicles that are performing supermarket restock, urban distribution, middle mile trucking, breweries, waste collection, construction, material delivery, concrete, aggregate, asphalt, bricks, concrete blocks, things like that. These are very good use cases, and these are moving fast and they're moving first. So those are the areas that we see. The introduction of 500 and 600 kilometer long heavy trucking is going to, over the next sort of 2 to 3 years, allow that sector to move as well. And that'll happen in combination with the availability of higher power charging, like those megawatt charging systems that organizations like Milans are now currently building across Europe.
Leah, what do you see as the biggest enablers for sales success?
Incentives are very important. Regulation is very important. The availability of the vehicle types. I think a greater understanding within the market. So today, all the institutional knowledge is based around diesel operations. Moving that to an electric environment is challenging. Everything about electric trucks is challenging, can even be daunting at the start.
How extensive is the typical OEM product offering?
The OEM product offering is actually pretty extensive today. So there's multiple configurations available from the OEMs, particularly for rigid vehicles. So the multi-wheeler segment is really covered, which really fits to the construction and the urban delivery segment that we've referenced before. The battery packs then are also, there's multiple options where they can be changed. So for different battery packs, so you can upsize or downsize the battery packs depending on the application. And with some of the OEMs, for example, MAN, they have multiple connectors on the vehicle. So they have connectors on the back and the front, left and right side, which gives great flexibility with regard to charging due to cable lengths and positioning at charging stations. So the product is available. The support from the OEMs is also available. And the institutional knowledge is growing. And when you combine that then with a company such as ZeroMission and the operational services that we provide to ensure that operators can get today's work done as intended, then the utilization of the vehicle goes up and then the TCO comes down. And consequently, that's where we begin to get that equation working right in terms of diesel parity.
Is a full life cycle approach required for customers' EV fleet transition and operational setup?
Yes, a full life cycle approach is very important because when we talk about the successful operation of electric vehicles, we talk about it from the perspective, we look at it from the perspective of total cost of ownership. So total cost of ownership has to be full life cycle in order to minimize the cost and maximize the capital return. And that starts at the beginning in terms of planning and optimizing the route in the right way. And that can be quite a detailed undertaking, but it's really important to right size the fleet replacement ratio. So will 10 electric trucks do the same work as 10 diesel trucks? What will the charging park look like? What's the amount of energy required for that? And then what's the size of the batteries that the vehicles will need to complete a typical work duty and work cycle? And then if that system's designed around the operations in the most efficient way, then with the right type of operational software and electric vehicle fleet management, it can be run in the right way to ensure day-to-day success, but also being able to optimize the system by having access to very powerful analytics and insights, which can be used to drive efficiencies, improve driver behavior, include energy consumption, and so on. So these are really important, and that life cycle approach is critical. Without that, this technology will be more expensive than was planned or was hoped for, and that will be really detrimental to operators who are making really, really big investments. So smart tools and a data-based approach is going to be incredibly important.
What type of services do fleet operators need for success?
The type of services the fleet operators need they need advice in the early stages about what it's actually going to mean to their operation. So the impact, the benefit, but for sure the impact, understanding that schedules may have to change. And we've seen this from some of the OEMs themselves who have large logistics requirements, moving material and parts throughout their plants in Europe, and they've streamlined their operations. So I think operators and the customers of operators are going to have to look at that there may be a need to actually operate in a little bit of a different way to what they do today. So I think understanding that from early on, so the impact and the benefits, and going in with an open approach like that's really important. Then using data to right size the system, to select the right vehicles, to select the right batteries in the vehicles, and then to right size the charging infrastructure and the grid capacity at the site, and also then the role of any renewable energy on site, if there's going to be perhaps solar or building loads that can be incorporated, and mapping that back to the energy tariff. So that all needs to happen in the planning and development phase of a project. Then when the project is implemented, that project needs to be run using that same principle of data and analytics. And it's going to be really important to provide real-time information to the operators and to the drivers as to how the vehicle's performing from a energy perspective, to ensure the vehicle can stay on the route, to ensure it can maximize uptime and get today's job done as intended and be ready for the next assignment in the most efficient way. So that's then where the smart charging comes in, and taking the signals from the grid or any other energy inputs, So those two parts, the planning and the operations, are critically important. And a derivative of all of that operational data then is a significant amount of information which can be used for detailed analytics, reporting, insights to see how is the system working? Is it working as intended? How are the different assets performing relative to each other? And a system like ZeroMission is technically agnostic. So you can look at different makes of charger, different makes of vehicle, even different energy inputs, and figure out which ones are best, which are the ones we should be using in order to maximize the return from the system.
Thank you, Leah, for your time and expertise. We look forward to you discussing more on this exciting journey towards a more sustainable transportation sector. If anything you heard today reflects the challenges you're facing in your fleet, get in touch with us today at ExoFleets. We're always happy to talk through real-world solutions. exofleets.com